Hello and welcome to another anime review. Today we'll be discussing an anime that is typically considered to be a classic among many anime fans.
Many would go so far as to consider it an influential and groundbreaking masterpiece. I am, of course, referring to Cowboy Bebop, or Trigun, or Fullmetal Alchemist. Okay. I need to get more specific. The one with Shinji in it. Yep, today we'll be discussing Neon Genesis Evangelion. Ah yes, Evangelion. Few shows before or since have created as much controversy as this quasi-philosophical mecha series has. Now, some of you might be wondering why that is. Possibly because you haven't seen it yet, or maybe because you have seen it and you still might find yourself wondering. As I mentioned, this show often divides many anime fans. Some end up loving it, becoming hardcore, obsessive fans praising the show's thematic and artistic brilliance, while others, well, end up yelling at the television screen in a resounding chorus of anger. Alright, I've delayed this enough. Let's dive into the review, shall we? The story opens up in a near future of 2000. After a global disaster which wiped out half of the human race. Must have missed that one. It turns out that the global disaster was caused by an attack of a group of bizarre alien monsters referred to as angels. The anime opens up 15 years after this event, introducing us to everyone's favorite angsty youth, 14-year-old Shinji Ikari. Follow Shinji as he's recruited by a secretive military unit known as NERV to pilot a mecha called an Evangelion, or EVA for short. And those few people that can are all 14 years old because... As the anime unfolds, the central conflict is Shinji's internal struggle for meaning in contrast to the physical confrontations with the angels. He makes new relationships with his fellow EVA pilots Asuka and Rei, as well as his guardian, Misato. With each new battle, the monstrous angels seem to become stranger and more terrifying, to sink further into depression as the chaos around him continues to destroy everything he holds dear. The anime eventually concludes with the line between reality and Shinji's own imagination, leaving much open to interpretation. I'm going to get into more detail about this, so just to let you guys know, there will be spoilers ahead. Like most other series, but especially in the case of Evangelion, the development of the characters is particularly important. Most significant of all is Shinji. The whole plot of the series essentially revolves around Shinji's development, or perhaps lack thereof.
Now Shinji is usually categorized as something of a pathetic, weak, and useless character, but I typically think that...
Hold on a second, bro.
Who are you?
My name is... Well, you can just call me the Lexorcist or whatever, but a lot of fanboys and fangirls have this expectation of a little 14-year-old boy. And you don't understand maybe, but he has been given the responsibility of saving the world. And I don't know about you, but could you handle that when you were a 14-year-old little wee child? I mean, maybe you're special, but Shinji is just another adolescent child with a rough past and a crap dad. And that's kind of rough, so.
That was random.
We learned that Shinji's mother died when he was very young. If that wasn't enough, he is essentially forced into piloting the EVA by his father, the mysterious leader of NERV. Their relationship is strained to say the least, with Shinji's father expressing little but contempt for him throughout the series. Though it could be said that Shinji's initially piloting the EVA to impress his father, he only does so by understanding how important his gift is with the encouragement of Misato. Much of this reason for continuing to pilot the EVA is due to Misato's encouragement, though even she doubts the wisdom of putting so much on one young boy. There are two other characters who have very significant relationships to Shinji. The first character is Asuka, the second EVA pilot. She has a great deal of confidence and is incredibly aggressive in combat as well as with her teammates. Asuka reveals a hint of insecurity regarding Shinji's skills, often talking down to him in regard to his skill level. However, this is mostly a facade, for much like Shinji, much of her development revolves around her overcoming the self-doubt and facing her inner demons. The other character is often considered to be one of the more popular characters in anime, probably dwarfing Shinji as an icon of the show. Rei seems to be somewhat devoid of emotion for the earliest episodes, and her background is held in mystery for the most part. As the story continues, Rei develops more emotional responses, particularly in regard to Shinji. The two form a bond and both grow to care for one another as the battles intensify. We eventually learn the secrets of her origin, and that she is instrumental to the secretive experiments conducted by NERV in the battle against the angels. Evangelion, in addition to being well known for its unique character designs and fluid animation, is perhaps best remembered through the heavy themes explored through its characters, including religious, psychological, and philosophical topics. In regard to psychology, many of the main characters have dealt with some trauma regarding their parents. Both Shinji and Asuka have suffered the loss of a loved one and are forced to keep their inner feelings cut off from others. While Shinji is enclosed emotionally and has various anxieties about interacting with others, Asuka created her own barrier through a bullying personality. However, both of them use the Evas as a way to gain confidence and a reason to keep existing. Solution, however, as Shinji and Asuka both use the Evas to hide their feelings and would feel helpless and ultimately worthless without them. There are also a number of religious illusions, most notably that various energy beams in the series take the shapes of crosses, indicative also of the complex plot involving Shinji and Rei, Nerve's secret backers, and the truth about the Evas and the Angels. Though I won't pretend that I could explain the whole thing, as much of the truth is left open to interpretation. The Angels are the descendants of an alien race which populated Earth and spawned into two different forms of life, one being the Angels and the other being humanity. In a dark twist, the tone of the series seems to imply that the Angels have been sent by some higher form of life, possibly the Judeo-Christian God, to wipe out the human race due to the sin of humanity. Through genetic manipulation, Nerve created the Evas with angel DNA and manipulated Shinji and the other pilots in a plot to use the power of the Angels to create a newer and possibly better universe. Just take a second to let that sink in. Yeah, I know my mind's blown too. In keeping with the unfolding plot, many philosophical questions are also asked. These typically revolve around Shinji as he struggles to wrestle with the concept of reality and the meaning of his own existence, as well as themes of free will versus fate and the importance of responsibility to others. Now that we've got all that covered, some of you might be wondering what I think of the series. Well, my feelings on this show are mixed. While most people are usually on opposite sides of the spectrum with this one, I'm somewhere in the middle. There are some things I love about this series, and there are some things that I absolutely hate about it. Let's start with the good stuff. Well, pretty much everything I mentioned before falls under the category of the strengths of the series. The plot, though a bit complex and sometimes rather abstract, creates an interesting mythology based on a rather wacky interpretation of Christian mythology. Also, the characters are fairly complex themselves, and most of them do undergo a fair amount of development throughout the series, both due to the challenges they face and their relationships to each other. As I mentioned before, the anime also deals with many heavy, thought-provoking themes, both the characters and the imagery. The animation is pretty solid, particularly in regard to the design of the Angels and the Eva mechs. The dubbing is also rather high quality compared to other anime of the time. Unfortunately, there are some things about this series that do kind of bug me. The most annoying aspect of the show is probably the fact that, quite frankly, most of the characters just aren't that likable. It is very easy to perceive Asuka as a whiny brat, and Shinji's self-doubt often becomes frustrating to watch and is kind of repetitive. Also, I absolutely detest Shinji's father. As I should. He's such an unlikable bastard. The only character that I really like in this series is Misato. This is probably because she's a well-rounded and strong female character, though she has her own dark past in discovering what Nerve is up to, while also providing a nurturing aspect for Shinji, supporting him through dark times. Another thing that ticks me off about this show is the ending. Due to the lack of budget, the last two episodes of the show descend into something completely abstract. In the midst of the final confrontation, Shinji literally goes into his own mind, or maybe he's bending reality, it's never completely clear, and starts contemplating all the philosophical questions in relation to himself. In the end, he realizes he doesn't need to pilot the Eva to have a meaningful existence. The anime essentially closes on a hallucination or an altered reality where everything is fine and Shinji is okay with himself. I would be fine with this ending, honestly. It actually had Shinji go through some final developments and leaves a ray of hope for the future. However, this ending doesn't really conclude anything concretely in the series itself. It just kind of veers off into some dream state, and many fans view this as kind of a cheat. Well, this leads to a second problem. You see, the ending isn't technically the actual one. A movie to end the show in a less surreal way. And well, the truth is that as visually stunning as the film is, I preferred the ending of the anime. In the film, called End of Evangelion, everyone that you ever cared about finishes their respective arcs and, well, dies. Rei fuses with one of the angels to recreate the universe, being left is Shinji, a whimpering, perverted, and emotionally disturbed young boy who is basically the new god. Yep, seems kinda messed up, huh? My main problem with this is that you spend the whole series trying to watch Shinji grow, and at least in the anime version, he actually does change. I'm not saying it had to be a positive change necessarily, but the main character does need to grow. And in the canonical ending of the series, Shinji is essentially right back where he started, maybe even worse. Now I suppose you could interpret that a number of ways, but it just left me feeling a bit annoyed. Now that I've torn into this classic show a bit, you might be wondering how I'd rate it. Well, I'd give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The show did redefine what a mecha anime could be, to stereotypes of the genre and using them to explore interesting concepts. It isn't a perfect series. The characters are mostly kind of unlikable, and the main character either doesn't go through any development or he railroads the whole series to actually get one. The animation is often stunning and the plot is rather interesting and certainly gets you thinking. If you're an anime fan, I highly recommend watching it. Love it or hate it, it's a classic series that definitely deserves some of your time.